Hey everyone. All right, we are just getting set up here. I have to get my AirPods in. Didn't realize how quickly 12 o'clock was coming up on me. By the way, I always forget to mention, let me start record here on my recording device. I always forget to mention, if you are not watching this live, if you are watching this after the fact, I have chapter markers. I put chapter markers in the description for the show for each episode. Of course, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you want to, and you'll get just the show. But if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to skip all the introductory setup stuff, like me putting in my earbuds, just look at the chapter markers and you'll see the beginning of the show, the start of the show in the chapter markers. There's also a little chapter markers link somewhere. Let's see, right around here. Right around here, I think, is where you're going to see it. And you can just skip ahead. Just skip ahead to what you want to see. You don't have to watch all this setup stuff. Right at the moment, we're waiting for Eric to join us. He'll be here in just a moment. I'm on the new Ecamm Live version 4. Now, I had been using the beta over the past couple episodes of For Mac Guys Only as we've been doing this. And the beta's been great. Lots of cool new features in this that I'm excited to maybe someday take advantage of when I can finally get the kind of bandwidth that I deserve. Gosh darn it, I deserve better bandwidth. No, we've got pretty good right now. But yeah, one of these days, we have the opportunity to expand up to 10 guests. I believe it's 10 plus hosts, so 11? I don't know. Or it's 9 plus hosts, one way or the other. But yeah, it's great. And then you can multi-stream, multicast out to several destinations, not just one. So right now we're doing YouTube, but there's other destinations we could potentially live stream out to, not the least of which, say, Twitch or something like that. I'm just taking notes for the start of the show here, as I showed you a few weeks ago, if you were watching. I'll show you again. I always do this. I have this stack of Post-it notes here, and I write down the episode number, start time. Now that's start time, not start time as in we started at noon, but start time as in when we actually started recording the show per my Zoom audio recorder over here. But I do that to make editing easier. You know, if I have this raw audio file that I'm dealing with, my side and then Eric's side, bring them into Audacity, which is what I use for editing, and I can jump straight to the start point. And actually, what I have to do, and I sometimes forget this, is you have to go and cut off the end point first, and then jump to the beginning and cut off, at the start point, and then edit from there. It's a big time saver. As surprising as it sounds, it is a big time saver to write down the start time and the stop time. And when I get to the editing point. Now I see Eric is joining us. I'm not seeing his picture though.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second.
I'm seeing a shutter. It looks like a shutter.
It is a shutter.
Like a camera shutter.
Okay. How's that?
Hey.
There you go.
There you go. Now I might have to let me unlock this and adjust your video a little bit here, because I think let's see, there we go. And there we go.
Oh, it's a little
Oh,
too.
look
Yeah.
look, you're beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And just look at what I'm wearing right here too.
Woo! I love
Got
it.
the Mac Stock 6. Yep. Very nice shirt. It's awesome. It's my new favorite shirt.
Now let's see. Your
Can you hear me
audio
okay?
is. Am I coming through okay? Your audio is a little quiet.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can turn it up. Yeah. You're coming through fine.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay.
Oh, much better. Much better.
Much better?
Yep.
Okay.
Much better. Okay. Awesome. Hey, cool shirt. I dug this out of the archives.
Oh, look at that. That's even better.
I dug
That's
that out.
really nice.
It's cold down here in the For Mac Guys Only studios. I have to put on a sweatshirt.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, sorry about the last part of your trip. It sounds like that was not fun driving.
We could okay. Look, we'll share a little bit about what happened last week. So since we are live, we're out on YouTube right now. We don't have anybody watching right at the moment, but we are live,
Right.
and anybody who watches this after the fact. I had the opportunity through a family function that came up to go to California last week, and spend the day with Mr. Eric Erickson, which was awesome.
Yes.
Now, the most awesome thing, you may or may not guess this, Eric, but I'm going to show it right now. The most awesome thing of the entire day. Now, folks who've been watching the live stream will know. They may guess. They may have a good guess, but I'm going to show this right now. Ready? There we go.
I knew that's.
I got to meet the chicken fan. I got to meet the chicken fan in person. That was amazing. That was amazing.
And you can see it kind of over there. Still sits there actually in the same place. So
it is a sentinel. It is a sentinel standing guard over our recording to make sure that we do a good job and abide by all the rules.
Yes, right.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
One more time.
The chicken keeps you right in. Yeah.
Yeah. One more time for posterity. Here we go. I met the chicken fan. That's so awesome.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
It is.
I can't tell you how much that meant to me. I mean, seeing you and your family, that was fine. That was fine.
Yeah.
But the chicken fan.
I knew that it was something that was very special to you, and I didn't want to take away from that moment. So I thought, I'll let him be, because it's the chicken fan. So
the chicken fan. No, of course, it was amazing seeing you. It was amazing seeing your family again. It's been way too long. I think it's been 5 years since I've actually seen you in person, and so it was fantastic to see you and get to catch up and spend a little time with you and your family. So that was great. We did not have the opportunity to record a podcast. We thought maybe we would, but other stuff came up that we did instead, and it probably a much better use of our time.
Probably. All in all, it worked out well.
Now, the other big change here, I was telling folks just a moment ago that I am now running the official final release of Ecamm Live 4. We've been running the beta of it now for several weeks. The last, I don't know how many episodes we've been using the beta of version 4. And, every time we do an episode, we're getting the upgrades and all that. But the official release of Ecamm Live version 4 was yesterday. And of course, dutiful user, I had to upgrade right away.
Right.
But I figured it can't be worse. It can't be worse than running the beta.
Right. You should be able to count on that. Yeah. When it's the final release or the golden master, you got to think this has got to be better than the beta.
Yeah. What do you think, in their live stream yesterday, someone asked them what coding language they use for it. What do you think they use?
That's a good question. I don't know.
You would think folks thought Swift, Swift UI, but it's Objective-C.
Objective-C. Wow. And of
Yeah.
course, I haven't used the app on this end, outside of inside the browser. So I don't know what it looks like necessarily on your end. But yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Was it because it's older, um, or because I know there's still developers developing in Objective C. In fact, the guy that created I just know him as Mr. Noodle. I think the guy that created
Mr.
Hazel.
Mr. Noodle
Yeah,
Soft.
Hazelsoft. Yeah, he made a really great case for Objective C and a lot of the peculiarities that the language has that Swift doesn't. And he wasn't necessarily buying into the Swift. Um, everything should be done in Swift group,
Yeah.
like people have. And Swift is an excellent language, but yeah, there's still cases to be made. I think the thing with Swift is that it allows you either not to make some of the common mistakes or protects you from making those mistakes if you do, where
Mm.
Objective C doesn't. But if you're an experienced developer and you know what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, they referred to it as going old school, but I think it is it's a well-established app, and I don't see any reason to completely throw it out the window and start over.
Now, that always seems to take a lot more time than you would think. I mean, Apple's done that how many times now? And we've had to wait until an app has finally got to the place that it was earlier.
Yeah.
And, no, I would say not.
Yeah. And
What
and
I
you
was going to
you
ask, what
actually
features
you're an active coder. Or
I
yeah,
am.
you actively code. And so what is your primary language?
Well, actually, I've been working more and more in Swift, but a lot of times I have been doing stuff using Python and
Hmm.
um, JavaScript, obviously doing more scripting things. But Swift is actually a really good language. I kind of cut my teeth, or whatever you want to say, in Java. So
Oh,
and that that's very the syntax is very C-like, and so everything kind of copied that. So every programming language has its own syntax and its own you know peculiarities and stuff like that you have to get used to. But I also have done some PHP too. So, but what I'm focusing on more now is just Swift, because I would like to develop apps. So, but
right, of
yeah,
course.
it's
And that gives you that easier cross-platform coding, right?
right. And
Yeah.
exactly. And actually, Swift is open source. I mean, Apple put it out there, and you can actually script in Swift. And there's like whole, you can find YouTube channels devoted to Swift that have nothing to do with Apple necessarily, but just the language itself and even scripting in it. So it's pretty slick.
Are they all using Microsoft Visual Swift?
Right. Right. Yes.
Look at this
There
wonderful new
are a
language we
lot.
came up with.
Yeah, I know. Visual Swift. There are a lot of languages out there, even for the Mac. I know this is a rabbit hole, but I got this comparison utility that I really liked, and I knew it wasn't written native for the Mac, and it was called Beyond Compare. And anyway, I asked them what they had written it in, and they had said Free Pascal and Lazarus. So that was
Wow.
really interesting. And I have to say, even though you knew it wasn't a native app, it still looked better than many other apps that are non-native too. But obviously, Electron's kind of been the bane of my existence. But the
Everyone.
yeah, but it was really interesting, because I was like, I didn't even realize that existed. So, which is
I'm still on 1Password 7, but I know 8 has been a little controversial because they moved to Electron. But on the other hand, from what I've seen of it, they've done a good job of making it feel like a Mac app.
I haven't checked it out because, like you, I am on 7 as well. I did move to 8 on iOS, or the latest And that's really great. But then Apple kind of restricts that, so they can't. It pretty much has to compile this in the. I mean, even if they use some different language, I think it really has to. It's really stringent on what the final object code. I mean, it pretty much has to look like an iOS app does and work like an iOS, where the Mac it's a little bit more freeform. So, um, I I was going to say, case in point with Electron, I've used this email app called Spark, which I
Oh yeah,
really love,
yeah.
and they just came out with the new Spark 2.0 and or 3 or whatever. And the iOS app is terrific. The Mac app is terrible. And
Terrible.
they did it in Electron, and it's just in case I guess it's a single window thing. And one of the things the menu bar up in the Mac is kind of the central menu bar is kind of what makes a Mac a Mac. And they have like one menu filled with a whole bunch of different commands because they weren't able to do it any other way. And I'm like, it just, ugh.
The
Yeah,
the
it's
big
too bad.
giveaway of Electron to me is when you try to go into settings or preferences and you don't get a floating preferences window. You get this what feels like a web app.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what it is, because it's literally written in languages for the web. It's written in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and I think it runs on Node. It runs on a JavaScript server, Node.js or something. So, which does all the translating, and of course slows things down too because it has to go through that extra layer. But I know I'm getting too geeky for whatever, but it's it's like I said, it's kind of too bad. And I understand these applications and these companies that have to develop for multiple platforms. It's a lot easier to have one common code base and deploy to each platform. But kind of, in the case of 1Password and was it Agile Bits and Spark, which is Readdle, I think. Those companies, and I don't think they had their start in the Mac because they probably could have done whatever. But 1Password, I mean, that was a Mac first app that I
yeah,
remember, and
yeah.
it's just kind of too bad that they went the way that they did. I guess, especially since they did. 1Password 7 is a terrific application.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask you. So you must use their servers for syncing, then? Not you don't self sync or self host your 1Password database, then?
No, I do use I have their family
Me too.
plan or whatever,
Yeah, and there's no upgrade.
which I actually got through Euro. What'd you say?
There's no upgrade. There's no way to move from family to subscription without. Well, yeah. So I have the family license. Let me correct what I was just saying because I was wrong. I have the family license that I paid more for it than the individual license so that I can run it on all of our Macs.
Right. Yeah, I had that. Yeah.
But while they do offer a 50% off for 3 years upgrade if you move to their servers, there's no discount program for moving to the family plan and their servers.
Oh,
So
that's the
I've kind of stuck with it. I have 1Password 7 on the phone and 1Password everywhere. 1Password 7 everywhere, and I guess I'll just ride it out until
you
it doesn't
can't.
work anymore. Yeah.
Right. And that makes sense. The family subscription thing I've got through Euro, which is Amazon's routers, and they have like a Euro Plus, which you pay extra for. It's Secure Plus, and it does have like malware bytes, 1Password, and a couple other interesting things that are probably worth having too. And so I got it through that, and I've been using that, and I do like it because everybody has their own vaults, and then we have some shared vaults and stuff like that.
And this is Amazon Euro, you said?
Yeah, it's EERO. It's
Oh, the
they're
Eero, the routers.
right, the mesh
Ah,
routers, right?
got it. Got it.
Yep.
I
Which
thought
I
they
think
had
is
yet
more.
another new program I didn't know about.
I know which They probably created 3 new programs just when we were talking right now,
I
knowing
know.
Amazon. So
I know.
yeah.
The other change on my end, and I don't know, this is the very first time I'm doing this, is I took this off my microphone. This is a little pop
Oh,
filter type thing, which
right.
I have one of these at the office studio, and I have one here, and I replaced it with a foam cover, like
Okay.
a foam microphone cover. I wanted to get a
Yeah.
cool color. Unfortunately, the foam windscreen covers for the Audio Technica AT2035, which is what I have. The 2020, the 2035, the 20 whatever, they're all the same size, but I couldn't find any cool colors. All I could find was black. So I was kind of looking
Oh,
for like an orange or a purple or something like that,
yeah.
but I couldn't find one that would fit it properly. I could find one that would go over it, but it wouldn't cover the full microphone. So kind of what's the point then?
Right, right,
Or cover the full, the business end, I should say, the business
right,
end of the microphone.
exactly.
It wouldn't cover it all the way. So black it is, but maybe one of these days I'll find a cool color for it.
You
And
find it, yeah. I didn't
yeah,
even know they existed really. I guess I've always only ever seen black, but I'm sure there's, yeah. I mean, I've,
yeah. I'm trying to think of the brand microphone. There's one I've seen. Ecamm uses them for their live streams, and they have
oh,
orange foam covers on them.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. I just
The
thought
orange is,
a nice bright color. Because right now, I mean, I guess it's kind of nice in that it kind of blends into my black top here.
right, right. It does.
But whatever.
Yeah. The orange would be really, I mean, especially against your black hoodie, it would really pop out.
It would
I
pop. Yeah.
Yeah, the orange is one of my favorite colors, and the in fact, it kind of made me think of the when you said the microphones they use have the orange color. There's an amplifier company. I don't know if they're still around, but they were called Orange, and
Mm.
their amps were like orange, and the word orange looks totally late '60s, early '70s font typography. Just a beautiful and a great sounding application or amplifier as well. So
And you bought them only because
they
it
were
was
orange.
orange. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked them only because they were orange.
Let's
Yeah.
let's see if I can find it real quick here. Whoops. Don't
Yeah.
actually start playing here. Let's see. Um, they're Shure. They're Shure mics that they use
Oh,
for
yeah.
Ecamm. Yeah, I was watching their
Oh, dude, you sure? Okay, that's interesting.
yeah, they use Shure. So I was watching their live stream yesterday with the introduction of version 4. And yeah, I've seen them before, but I was paying attention to the brand, and of course I forgot the brand, so I just had to look up the brand again. But it's Shure mics,
And so they had orange windscreen.
windscreens, yeah,
Yeah.
foam windscreens, yeah. I guess I could go
Were
with the
they
big fluffy,
dead cat?
I don't like to use the nickname for them. That's too cruel.
Yeah. I know it is. It is. I know
The
that.
the nickname
Or
being Dead Cat, but
right.
it's
Yeah. What is these? Are these foam covers? Is it clown's nose or something nose? I
I
can't
don't know.
remember. But
Then it needs to be
yeah,
red.
I know
Yeah.
exactly. So the Shure ones, the Shure mics have orange
Well, they
cover.
have orange covers on theirs. I don't know if they come
Oh,
with that or not, but
okay, that's
it's
interesting.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Now,
It's
speaking of new equipment, didn't you were telling me, I believe, unless I misunderstood, that you have new equipment now for doing these live streams. Didn't you say you got a new mic?
yeah, yeah, I did. Which I was going to ask if my audio is any better or worse. Yeah, I got a Shure mic actually on my end.
Oh, there you
It's
go.
not their flagship, which is like the Shure SM7B, I think.
Hmm.
I got the MV7, which is kind of more geared towards podcasting, and while it does have an XLR out, it also just has a USB connection, which is what I'm using now.
Ah,
Uh,
so what is that? That's a condenser mic then?
no, this is actually a dynamic mic. Um, Yeah, it's odd. I'm sure I know they make condenser mics, I'm sure, but it's actually a dynamic mic, so it's kind of made for. Although I guess this one is still really just only made for um, talking. I suppose you could sing into it.
Mm.
Dynamic mics are more made for singing and stuff like that.
The SM58, that's their
Yeah,
kind of stage mic with the little ball on it. That's a dynamic, isn't it?
that's I think yeah. And
Yeah.
so the problem with dynamic is, well, I mean, the good thing with dynamic is you can like shout into them and scream and whatever, and they'll handle everything. But the the downside is they kind of need to have some power going to them or some amplification after. You need a preamp in there. So if I plug it into an XLR, the XLR jack, I would need to have some sort of preamp in there, like a cloud lifter or whatever that could, you know, power it, actually pull the sound from it, where a condenser doesn't really need that so much. I think you can power them through phantom power, but the dynamic mics need like a boost in gain after, so like I think like I was going to say like a Zoom H6 or something like that probably could provide it. I think that can do at least 70 dB gain or whatever. So that's probably
Hmm.
would be enough. But I haven't tried it. Like I said, I'm just using the USB connection. And if you use the USB connection, they've got a little app that'll run on your computer, and you can control the mic's settings within that app too. So
Oh,
I
wow.
just went that route. So
Cool. And then what are you
yeah.
using for earbuds now?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, because I had trouble with the AirPods, and at least we thought we did. And then I took it out, and I don't know if I didn't have my other headphones, but when I used nothing last time, I had asked if there was any problems. They're like, nope. So
Nope.
I just
No
got stuck
problems.
with it.
You
Yeah.
know, I wonder though about the AirPods and web-based audio. I was trying to do phone calls through my browser yesterday, Google Voice, phone calls through the browser, and I had the AirPods in and was running into weird similar problems where it would cut in and out and things like that, but I hadn't had any problems with them at all in anything else. So I don't know if it just has something to do with web-based type audio or what the deal is. And that doesn't make sense. I mean, like logically, technically, it doesn't make sense, but
Right.
it seems to
No,
be what's going on.
you know, my answer to that is Bluetooth. And
Hmm.
Apple's AirPods are probably some of the best Bluetooth, headphones around, whether they're H1 or H2 chip or whatever. I mean, the distance that you can cover too is just amazing. Where
Pretty
from
amazing.
the source, but it's still you still have cutouts every now and then. I mean, there's still issues, like you said, and who knows what's going on there. And what's odd is it almost seems like if I play for my iPhone, I mean, I can walk the length of the house down and live in in a ranch, and it's fine. And sometimes I'll play the music off my computer, and I'll just be using my MacBook Pro, and I'll have cutouts, and it's like, what's going on? The computer's right there. Why am I, you know, having
Well,
trouble?
as someone who's a relatively brand new AirPods user, there was a phenomenal deal on the first generation AirPods Pro. I'll just tell folks it was $129.
Yeah,
$129 for the AirPods Pro first gen, and I can't justify spending the extra 70 for the AirPods Pro 2 on sale. They're always on sale
right,
for 199. I can't
right.
justify that extra 70 when these were 129. I
No,
I
yeah,
bought a previous in fall. I bought a pair for my wife, and they were 169 for the first gen, and I thought that was a great deal.
it's a good price. Yeah,
So to get them for 129, I was like, well, I can't pass this up. So I'm a relative new user of the AirPods in general. Never had them before, but like all Apple products, I have to say, I have to admit, they're magic. They work like magic.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
amazing how well they work. The device switching is cool.
Yeah.
I set mine to not automatically switch because it's frequent that I have the phone and the computer and stuff all working, and I don't want them going switch back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
the switching is admittedly pretty cool, and the
Yeah.
ear. I'm sure other brands have this, but they stay disconnected until you plug them in, and then boom,
Right.
they're connected. It's Apple magic.
No,
Apple
it is.
magic.
And it just, I even just love the whole recharging in the case bit, throw them in the case, they charge, and, it's just, put the charge the case, you could put, charge it wirelessly or you can plug it in. It's just a nice deal.
In fact, you just reminded me that I need to charge my case.
It's,
I
it's
was using them yesterday, and because I was making phone calls, I just put one in. And
yeah,
then at one point, I put the other one in, and I noticed the battery was going down on this one, so I took it out and put it in the case and left the other one in. Noise cancellation is okay. Some sound still gets
yeah,
through, and I know the version 2 is supposed to do a better job of that. But
yeah,
they're great. Most of the
yeah,
time I just leave it off. I don't bother with noise cancellation or anything. But I do like to get a little ambient noise in my ears while I have earbuds in.
yeah,
So noise cancellation is still something I need to get used to.
yeah. And some people don't ever get used to it. I know my wife and daughter don't really use it too much. And I was going to say, I think my sister, sometimes it can make your ears feel like they're plugged or they're kind of
Hmm.
give this sensation of being full. And some people don't like that.
Yeah.
And I've just gotten used to it. I mean, I started a long time ago on Bose headphones and, whatever. And so noise cancellation has really gotten steadily better. It, like you said, it won't eliminate all sounds, but it really quiets them down, and it does, quite a good. I mean, at least the second gen iPod or AirPods do really well. And like I said, I think it was something they were getting sued by Jabra or some patent troll that bought Jabra's patents and was suing Apple for violating some of those patents for their noise cancellation. So I think they actually dialed back some of their
Mm.
noise cancellation in their first gen AirPods, and people were thinking that maybe that's why it took them as long as it did to come out with the second gen, was to come up with something that didn't violate anybody else's patents.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I have some, what do you call some cans? I'll just call them cans, over the
yep,
ear headphones that are they don't have noise cancellation built into them. They're plug-in, quarter-inch jack plug-in headphones, but they seal and they lock out all the noise in the room. And I
yeah,
find that I have to find some way to lift it up slightly because it's
yeah.
very disorienting to me to have that much noise cut out. And so I will often put them like just over the edge of my ear so that a little noise can get in because
Can get in
it's
there. Yeah,
very weird to me.
yeah. That can be very disorientating.
Now,
It's probably like a silent room where those people go nuts because it's so quiet they can hear their heartbeat or whatever.
yeah, with the little foam triangles on the wall and
Yeah,
everything, and
right.
yeah. Okay, so
Yeah,
33 minutes in, I did tell folks at the beginning, a little reminder, I put chapter markers in. So once the final video is out, if you're watching this after the fact, there's chapter markers. You can jump ahead to the start of the show. You can jump to the end. Depending on the type of show, we might put chapter markers in to mark different topics as we go through it. But most of the time, it's our jawing at the beginning, and then when we start recording, and then the end, the wrap up at the end. But I'll try to be a little bit better. It takes some time to go through and find all these points to add a chapter marker.
oh, yeah.
But for episodes like today's, I will definitely have them in there so that you can leap ahead to the different topics we're going to be covering today. Which brings us to the show. So we are 34 minutes and 40 seconds into recording. Go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Here we go then. In 3, 2, 1. It's For Mac Guys Only, episode number 402 for January 27th, 2023. The return of ListenerPalooza. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to share your thoughts on Macs is my For Mac Guys Only co-host, Eric Erickson. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
I am doing great. And for folks who watch the live stream, you'll know I had a fantastic time last week meeting you and your family and the chicken fan.
Chicken fan.
And speaking of those of you who are joining us live, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat room. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, please be sure to preface it with the word Q. With the word question or the letter Q, and I'll try to address it as we move on. Well, Eric, just like last time, I think it's time to pull an old idea off the shelf, blow off the layers of dust, and bring back a favorite, because it's time once again to hand the show over to our listeners. Folks who tune in each week are the very thing that is the lifeblood of this show. It's the lifeblood of For Mac Is Only, because let's face it, if we only wanted to chat about tech, well, Eric, we'd just get on the phone and, oh wait, we do that already.
Yeah.
In fact, if you watch the live stream, we've just been doing that for a half an hour.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. But kidding aside, the reason we keep producing the show is because we love hearing from all of you. And we've both made some pretty good friends in the Apple community throughout the years because of For Mac Guys Only. In fact, just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe now it's been, I was able to take a virtual stroll through Exeter in the UK, and I had the opportunity to relive a slice of history thanks to our friend Darren. So thank you, Darren. That was really awesome for you to send that over to me.
Cool.
And I sent that to you too, didn't I, Eric?
I don't know if I got it.
Well, if I didn't, I'm going to be sure to send it to you because it was really cool. It was a virtual walk through the city of Exeter. It was amazing.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I spent at least 2 hours doing that instead of the work I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But virtual tours of Exeter aside, we get questions about Macs and iOS too. So these shows are a way for both of us to say thank you. Because without you, we wouldn't have much of a show. So thank you for sticking with us all these years, and thank you for being part of our little community of Apple fanatics. So Eric, with that intro aside, what say you? Are there any news stories from the past couple of weeks that you would like to chat about first, since it's been a few weeks since we did an episode, or should we get started with our ListenerPalooza?
The only thing I can think of is the M2 Pro and Max debut, and then of course they launched a new HomePod, which I don't know, doesn't really look any different or even functionally different than the original. So I'm not sure exactly what that, but the M2 Pro and Max look like they're pretty good. It sounds like, at least in the the multiprocessor part of it, they're quite a bit higher than the original M1. So, but other than that, I haven't had a real big chance to look or read about them.
Well, I saw an interesting comparison between the M2 Pro Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, the M1 Mac Studio. And the end result was, gosh, you're going to do really well no matter which one you go with. But that often that M1 Max still comes out on top. So it's going to be really interesting when they finally come out with that M2 Ultra and can introduce the next generation of Mac Studio to see how well that performs. Because the Mac Studio is just, it's a beast. For a tiny little computer, it is a beast. And the reason they did this comparison is because once you spec out the Mac Mini, which, by the way, was the replacement for the Intel Mac Mini.
Okay.
Once you spec out that Mac Mini the way that a lot of you know, power users would like to spec it out, you end up paying about the same price as an introductory Mac Studio.
Mac Studio.
So I believe this was on Macworld. I'll try to find the link and put it in the show notes, because there were instances where the Mac Mini came out ahead, but then others where the Mac Studio came out ahead. So really interesting comparison. And at least in the author's case, and in my case too, when I think about it, the reason to go with the Mac Studio is for those extra ports. That SD
Yeah.
card slot on the front is
That's a huge deal.
as dumb as that sounds. That is a huge deal. Even the iMac I have at the office, it's a 27-inch iMac that we've talked about here a few episodes back when I upgraded it. But the SD card slot is on the back. It is not a great spot for the SD card slot.
It's really not. It isn't. Yeah. And I think I remember when they debuted the Mac Studio, and one of the comments from like a user, I think we were following the live stream. So somebody was watching the live stream through something, and one of the users said, "We won," because they put the SD card slot in the front and a USB port in the front, which is something that Mac users have wanted for so long. That it is. I like you said, the extra ports, and also I think probably there, who knows? There's probably other things about the Mac Studio too that aren't as easy to quantify that make it better too than the Mac Mini. One of the things I had heard, this is with like the entry level Mac Mini, and I think also it might have hit the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro even, was that at least on the entry level, they use one NAND chip for the, essentially for the lowest amount of, storage, their SSD. Yeah. And it really is a huge hit in performance, because they need to have, it needs to, at least with NAND flash, it needs to have multiple chips in there so it can run things in parallel and read and write faster. And so anyway, they said that was kind of a bummer, especially they said, the entry level Mac Mini and the, MacBook Air are okay, but the MacBook Pro, even though it's a 13-inch, entry level MacBook Pro, they thought that was kind of nuts because, you have a machine with the word Pro on it, it should be better than that. So that was kind of interesting.
Which is an argument that we've been having for several years now with the Pros. I did see an article about that this morning, and I did not take the time to read it because I was prepping for today. But if I understand correctly, it's only on the lowest end storage, right? Like the 256 gig. Right. It doesn't affect, if you upgrade to 512 or a terabyte or 2 terabytes, it doesn't affect that.
Right. No, exactly. It's the lowest end storage on those machines. Yeah.
Yeah. That entry level that gets them to the price point that they want to promote.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And I remember that was a problem when they introduced the M2 last year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That they were finding that those M2s were not performing as well storage wise.
Right.
They didn't have the throughput, I should say. They didn't have the throughput reading and writing that the older ones did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's kind of weird with the whole chip thing right now is because they do have these multiple levels. So, it's hard because you have the M1, you have the base chip, and then you have the M1 Pro, M1 Max, M1 Ultra, and now you have the M2 base chip, and now they're finally coming out of the M2 Pro and M2 Max. But it's like the M1 Max, for example, can be faster. Well, I mean, outperform the M2 in a lot of ways. And even, like you said, the M2 Pro, just because it's got extra stuff on there that the M1 doesn't, whether it's for video encoding or, faster bandwidth, for memory and all that stuff, that even though the M2 is definitely a step up. And I wonder, well, I guess we probably have seen that kind of stuff with previous generations of chips and with clock speed and all that, but I don't it's just kind of an interesting time, I guess, with Apple Silicon, and it's not as probably clear cut as it maybe was before. You know,
as it could be. Yeah, I
yeah,
believe I believe you're right. I believe the instances where I really should pull that article up, but I don't have it at hand right now. I believe the instances where the M1 Max Mac Studio outperformed the M2 Pro Mac Mini were in the GPU intensive tasks, where the M1 Max has more GPU cores.
right,
And
right,
that's where it was outperforming it. The other thing that they
yeah,
mentioned too is that the Mac Studio has the ability to throttle up a little bit more because it has
oh, yeah,
those two honking fans in it that help keep it cool. And
right.
that's something that the Mac Mini doesn't have.
Doesn't
Uh,
have, yeah,
but you know, I I can't remember if the article mentioned this or if I just thought it, but it's getting harder and harder to make a case for there to be a 27-inch iMac any longer.
yeah, yeah,
Imagine if Apple came out with another studio display, and I'm just using that term generically here, but another studio display with a mount on the back for the Mini.
right, right.
And even if Apple doesn't, certainly a third-party manufacturer will come out with a shelf or a mount or something
Oh,
that you can stick
yeah,
a Mac
Pulse
Mini
out
on.
or whoever.
And
Yeah,
other than the sheer elegance of having everything enclosed within a display, it would be hard to argue not to get a Mac Mini, M2 Mac Mini, and an Apple display and just calling it a day,
right, right.
or anybody's
Seriously,
display really.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
No,
I don't know. Do you think we will see a 27-inch iMac, or do you think that the days of that are gone?
well, I kind of wonder. And of course, I kind of made. I think I said something similar to that last week when we met, and I said because there's people talking about the studio display now, and they said, well, it's over engineered, it's got all this extra stuff in there, and it's basically got, well, what an iPhone 13 in there, at least the guts of it, and they
Isn't
were
that
saying
crazy?
that, yeah, I know that it's really too much, and of course that adds to the expense. But they were the thought was is that when you look at the Apple Studio display today, you're looking at a future 27-inch iMac, and I kind of took a different opinion on that. I said my thought is when you look at the Studio display today, you're looking at what was going to be the
Mm,
27-inch iMac, and they decided against it for whatever reason, that it just wasn't worth it. Not saying that they can't do something in the future, um, but I wonder too. I wonder if it really makes a lot of sense, especially with the Mac Studio. And it almost is like for my thought, that they were going to, come out with a 27-inch iMac and decided, you know what, let's do this instead. Let's put the internals, in its own desktop machine and make it better, make it, give us the room we need, and the ability to, even just like you said, have ports in the front and have the extra ports and do all this stuff, which I think was a better call. I totally do.
yeah, I do too. As silly as maybe this sounds to the ears of Apple, I mean, why not just release a display? How about just
Yeah.
something that's a display? I mean, it's
Right.
great to have the camera in it. It's great to have all that extra technology in it, like you said, but
Right.
really, firmware updates for my display, come on.
Right.
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
monitor for goodness sakes. Put
Yes.
put all those brains in the Mac Mini and or Mac Studio and be done with it.
Be done with it.
And then
Yeah.
of course, there's the news that the Mac Pro may not be quite what we thought it was going to be. They're,
Right.
they're now
Which
saying that it may ship in the same chassis as the 2019 and yet not have the upgradability that folks were hoping for in a $50,000 computer.
right. And you know what? I kind of wondered about that ever since they announced it and the switch to Apple Silicon. I just kind of thought, how are they going to do this? How are they going? I mean, obviously, the memory with, the unified memory. I mean, you can't do anything there. And I suppose they could do something with an external graphics card, but again, why? If you've got all the power that's, in whatever M2 Ultra type chipset, it
Hmm.
just, the whole idea of Apple Silicon and the ARM, and the ARM thing is what is it? Advanced RISC machines is the SoC, system on a chip,
Right.
and so it doesn't lend itself to that. Not saying that they couldn't have expansion slots for things that we haven't thought of yet, or other things that are niche that pro level users might need to have, for some server farm, or who knows what. Certainly there could be that, but I think as far as the other upgradability type stuff, it's probably not going to be, yeah, like you said, it's not going to be what we think.
Yeah,
And
we argued on the show several years ago that if Apple doesn't, bring that pro level machine with the ability to swap out components and make it upgradable, that they may lose a not all, but a decent chunk of the pro
right,
market that needs that type of capability. One of the comments I saw this week was from someone who didn't give a name, but said that they work in 3D animation, and that it, he he was holding off on making a decision to leap to Windows until the Mac Pro came out in 2019. And then he went ahead and jumped to the 2019 Mac Pro. But now that he's looking at what might be, and again, it's all rumor and speculation, but looking at what might be the Mac Pro of 2023, he's saying that might be the turning point, because he can't make that kind of investment in a computer knowing that every couple of years, if that long, he needs to upgrade graphics cards, and that's the most important thing to him, according to what I read, is the ability to upgrade graphics cards. Throw all the memory in
yeah,
it that you want, throw in all the storage that you want, but to be able to keep on the cutting edge of, especially in 3D animation, keep on the cutting edge of where the industry is with GPUs, he needs the ability to swap out cards. And right now, to
yeah,
my understanding, Apple Silicon doesn't support third-party GPUs or even external GPUs.
right, right.
So,
So the and the thing is with that, well, one thing to keep in mind too is, I think especially with Apple and their Macs, especially the Mac Pro and stuff, they have been able to hold things pretty close to the vest, a lot more than they have, um, with other stuff that I mean, I know there's probably quite a bit of it that's still manufactured elsewhere, but I know they assemble a lot of their computers here,
mhm.
and the design is here. It's not so much like the iPhone, where there's so many vendors outside that you can get a good idea of what this is going to be before Apple even announces it, because there have been surprises in the past that Apple, I
Absolutely.
mean,
The Mac
that
Studio.
Apple, yeah. And so I'm thinking with that, they could still surprise us with something. The other thing is they could possibly push the envelope so much that, even if he does do this upgrade, if they create something significantly faster, than a graphics card is today, he may want to go that route
He may want to
anyway.
go that
But
route. Yeah.
also, Apple probably would be smart in allowing third-party graphics card if they can, and or making it a little less of a system on a chip part of it, and parsing some of that out. Still having you know the M1, the M2, whatever, but then, opening it up where people can take out and put in, or at least maybe replace the processor, replace that whole piece without having to buy a new chassis, a whole new computer just to
Mm,
do that. That could be another way they could get around it.
that could be
Um,
interesting. Yeah, swap out the brains, as it were.
right. Right. I think Apple's would be smart to keep the professionals, however small of a group that is. I know Apple, somebody I think said it best that they don't really care about a few people doing this stuff. They want everybody doing it. You know,
Mm.
they make their software and their hardware for anybody to do this. But obviously, the way they've priced their Mac Pro and all that stuff, um, which by the way, the XDR display, you said, too bad they can't just come out with a display. That's a case where they did, and it
Yeah,
costs like $5,000.
true.
Um,
Very, very true. Yeah.
but you know, if they
And that's
can,
without the wheels. You had to buy the wheels
yeah, I
for the
know,
display too.
right? uh, yeah, if they can, I think come up with something like that because I think they really, you know, if for no other reason than a skunk works or did, you know, the same reason why Chevy still makes Corvette, you know, they need to come out with an ultimate machine that says, here, this is what we can do. This is the ultimate. And it's for the pro user and it's going to give them, but they you do have to have it where it's a good bang for the buck. And the
Yeah.
Mac Pro always has been that, you know, since it was announced back in 2006. I mean, before this last iteration, I should say, it always was relatively affordable. You could always get into an entry level Mac
You could get an
Pro
entry level one. Yeah. Yeah.
for 2,400, 2,500, and then
Yep.
add on to it. And, you know, that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case. And you know, I've mentioned several times throughout the years that I had a Mac Pro, but it was on that end. You know, it
Yeah.
was on the lower end of the scale there. But it was one of those devices that I have been able to upgrade and keep relevant to me for, gosh, well, I think the first one, the 2006, when that came out, I think I kept that relevant for at least 12 years,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yep.
then I bought a used 2012 Mac
Yeah.
Pro, and I kept that up until last summer when I got the Mac Studio. So that was, you know, 10 years, a 10-year-old
Yeah.
computer. I didn't have it for 10 years, but that was a 10-year-old computer. And
Yeah.
it was that upgradability that allowed me to keep it functional for my needs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be really interesting. You were spot on when you mentioned the Corvette because that's exactly why Chevy keeps making it.
Yeah.
They don't make it because they're selling thousands and thousands every
That's
week.
right.
They, you know,
No.
they make it because it's that pinnacle of design and technology. It's a showcase. It's a showcase
Right.
vehicle.
Right.
And
Exactly.
everybody has their showcase vehicles, and that
Yeah.
is Chevy's showcase vehicle. And you know they know that when someone comes in to look at it, they're gonna pant and drool over it, and
Yeah.
unless they have the cash to drop on it, they may drive out with a Camaro
Right. Right.
instead. You know,
Yeah.
but it is the car that it's a skunk works in a way.
Yeah.
You mentioned skunk works too. It's a skunk works in a way because a lot of the development that goes into making the Corvette the car that it is trickles down to the other models. Whether
Yeah.
it's I don't even know what the current sedans are. Whatever the
Yeah.
current sedan is from Chevy, you know, whatever it is, the Camaro, what have you,
Yeah.
even the Blazer and whatnot, it makes it down to them, and it's a development tool for them. And
Yeah.
no doubt there's something really awesome coming in the Mac Pro, but if they stick something like the Mac Studio into the chassis of a Mac Pro, I question whether that's a good decision. That it's a weird decision for one.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I
I don't know
don't
why
think,
they would.
right. You would think their engineers could come up with something better than that
Yeah,
and
just a taller
something
Mac
more.
Studio for goodness sakes.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, we'd been hearing that there's the bonding of four chips. What were they going to call that? The M1 Extreme or something? I can't remember
Oh.
what they were going to call it. We had the Ultra.
Yep.
I can't remember what they were going to call it, but there was going to be the bonding of four, right?
Yep.
Because the Ultra is
The
two
Ultra.
like
Oh,
two
wait.
M1 Maxes. Is that what the Ultra is?
I think it is 2 M1 Maxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they were gonna take 4 of those and
Right.
stick them together into the Pro Ultra Extreme or whatever. And they scuttled that.
So I
So
wonder
they're going
what
to put an Ultra in the Pro, and they're going to put an
yeah.
Ultra in the Mac Studio. So, to your point, the Mac Studio has become that is definitely not become, it is definitely that entry level Mac Pro. It fits
Pro.
that niche.
Yep. Yep.
And then the higher end Mac Pro is folks like me can buy,
Right.
or folks unlike me
Exactly.
can
It's
buy. The
just
folks who have the budget can buy and need
right.
it
The folks
and
like
need it.
you.
I don't need it.
Yeah. The Mac the M or the Mac Studio really is kind of that mini tower. I mean, I think we had some extra things on there that we wished for, but it really did finally kind of come out with that. We really didn't want another 27-inch iMac. I mean, or an iMac. We like it. I mean, I always like them, but we've kind of wanted to separate that and
Mm-hmm.
come up with something like that for a long time, and they finally kind of did that with the Mac
Finally kind
Studio.
of did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way Apple is moving with well, let's be frank, disposable Macs, because we can't upgrade the storage, we can't upgrade the memory.
Right.
We haven't. Most laptops you can't upgrade the graphics. Some you can, but you can't
Right.
upgrade the graphics. You can't upgrade the CPU.
Right.
But the way we're moving towards a more disposable type Mac, the more sense it makes to not buy an all-in-one. To
Right.
not
Right.
buy the 24-inch iMac, to not buy the 27-inch. It makes much more sense to buy a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini and connect that if for a
To a
desktop
display.
and connect it to a display from anyone and a keyboard and mouse from anyone
Right.
and have a computer that when you are ready to upgrade its capabilities, you swap out the computer.
It's all about the computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual CPU part of it. Yep.
Yep. And that's
Which makes
essentially
sense.
what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Very smart.
awesome. So it'll be interesting to see. 2023 is going to bring some pretty exciting stuff from Apple.
Yeah.
Especially now that they're starting to roll out those M2s, and
Yeah.
we'll have to see. The Mac Studio should probably be in spring again, March, April, something
Yeah.
like that.
That's
And
what you would
then,
think. The Ultra.
We'll see what version 14 of macOS brings us.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, the glasses, when those come out, I'll be trading my glasses for, a pair of Apple glasses that I'm sure.
Will you? Will you go augmented reality?
I don't know. I'd have to see them. I would have to. I don't. Yeah. Yeah. They would really have to be, look not nerdy, not completely. Hey, I'm wearing. But they, no matter what, people will know that you're wearing them. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably going to be a big silver apple right in the center of them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we have got, our first question kind of ties into what we've just been talking about. We've got a ton of great questions to work through, probably more than we're going to get to in one episode. We've been recording for a half hour now. So I just kind of went through my catalog of past questions that we've received in the last few weeks and picked out a few that I thought would be interesting to cover today. One thing I would like to do is kind of take ListenerPalooza live. In my mind, I've been thinking of calling it office hours, but today I thought, why not call it ListenerPalooza Live? So as we start to do these live streams more and more, and as everyone gets used to us doing these live streams, with the exception of the holidays and this family function I had to leave town for this month, we're going to try to do live streams on the second and fourth Friday every month. And the way you stay on top of the live streams that we're putting out is by subscribing to the For Mac Guys Only YouTube channel. So be sure to do that. Click subscribe, click that notification bell, and you'll get a little notification when we're ready to go. And then when we have a live stream scheduled, you're going to see it right at the top of the For Mac is Only YouTube page. You're going to see the next live stream is on such and such. Let me try that again. Such and such date. And if we have to make changes, which sometimes we do, I will put a little comment at the beginning of the description that says we've had to reschedule due to whatever. And I'll then reschedule the live stream for when we're going to do it. But by subscribing on the YouTube channel, that's the best way to stay on top of it. So go ahead and do that. And let's see, it's youtube.com/FMEO TV. That's how you'll stay on top of that. So there's that. So why don't we go ahead and get started with this episode's ListenerPalooza, Eric?
Sounds good.
The first question is one that you actually took part in. This is from our friend Lisa. She had a question about upgrading her iMacs. Not upgrading the hardware so much, but upgrading the software, upgrading macOS on them. In fact, specifically, that was her question. Should I upgrade my iMacs? And I looked, this is actually somewhat of a follow-up question, or a variation, really, to one that Lisa sent us back in 2015. And that was featured in a previous ListenerPalooza. It was called ListenerPalooza of One, I believe, because we spent so much time talking about what she could or should do in that episode. And I believe back then the question was about upgrading her hardware. But this time the question is upgrading her software. She wrote, we have two 27-inch iMacs. We love the 27-inch size. Sorry, we just had that conversation, Lisa. They are both on Catalina, she wrote. So now this came in a few weeks ago. This came in fall, I should mention. But they're both on Catalina, which loses its support this year after Ventura comes out. Okay, so that gives you a little sense of when this question came in. So she wrote, do you think Monterey will be a good choice for both of them given the specs? And the specs are, one was an iMac 17,1, which is a late 2015 Intel Core i7 with 32 gig of memory. And the other was an iMac 18,3, which is a 2017 Core i7 with 32 gig of memory. And she wrote, if I bypass Big Sur, it leaves me a little more time before I decide what to do with the old one. I just hate doing iMac upgrades. They send me into deep stress and anxiety mode. I hear you. I hear you, Lisa.
Yeah.
The 2015 one, she sent a couple screenshots of the About This Mac screen, and she said the 2015 one cannot run Ventura. Nope. That was cut off with Ventura. There are options to upgrade to Ventura,
Right.
which we talked about a couple episodes ago. But they take some. We talk about stress and anxiety. They take a little nerve to want to go, and use Open Core Legacy Patcher to get Ventura on an older Mac. But 2015 iMac would be a good candidate for it.
It would be.
But I digress. I digress. She writes, they have never given us trouble. She has two Time Machine backup drives and a carbon copy cloner drive for each, just in case. That's amazing. That is fantastic to hear that not only is she doing Time Machine backups, but also doing clones as appropriate. And she continues, I do want them on the same release, and hope that holds until a new 27-inch, fingers crossed, she writes, can be released by Apple for us to buy. We would love any thoughts. Now, we both shared our thoughts with her. What do you think about that, Eric? 2015 iMac, 2017 iMac, both Intel Core i7s, 32 gig of memory. And she is currently on Catalina and looking to upgrade to Monterey so that they can both be on the same operating system. Should she stick with Catalina or go to Monterey?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what I remember, what we said. I think my thought was to upgrade to Monterey. Although,
yeah,
I I am like her. I stress out. I mean, I stress out just doing. I just upgraded to 13.2 yesterday from
Oh,
13.1, and I stressed about that. Just the watching the little line go in the Apple. It always takes. There's always that part where it goes to black, and you're like, is it going to come back?
is it going
Is
to
it
reboot
gone?
or what? What the heck?
Yeah, I know. And so I totally get that. But it seemed like I felt like if all possible, yeah, it made sense to upgrade to monitor. I mean, we always say that from a security point standpoint anyway.
Yeah.
If you know, but I do totally share her feelings.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. You know, Catalina, as of the release of Ventura, was no longer going to get security updates any longer, or
Right.
shouldn't, based on Apple's history. There
Yeah.
have been instances in the past where they have retroactively released a security update for something older than 2 years. But in general, 2 years is the cutoff point.
It's a
You know,
cutoff point,
once
right?
once you hit that point, you know, Catalina, Monterey, Ventura, Catalina gets cut off, and they continue with updates for Monterey and Ventura. And likewise, this fall, they're going to cut
Yep.
off Monterey and
Yep.
continue to release Ventura and, you know, I don't know, San Francisco, whatever this falls. You know, they'll do a
Sausalito.
little. They're going to do a cross promotion with Disney and Big Hero 6, and it's going to be San Francisco.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so you got that 2 year window, and that's what Lisa was counting on. And getting them both up to the same release, I think, makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So the answer is yes. I would definitely bring both up to the latest specs, at least in terms of macOS. The other benefit of that, of course, is you're going to continue to get software upgrades too. You know, Pages, Numbers, Keynote at the very least, but third-party developers too. They're, you know,
Exactly.
they have to make a decision of how far back they want to support, and many do go back as far as 10.13 and 10.14, but
Yeah.
that's getting to be harder and harder to find. You know, I
It
was
is.
talking about the live stream for the introduction of Ecamm Live 4 yesterday, and they said, you know, technically they believe it would probably work on computers 10 years old, but they, you know, have a cutoff point, which I think they said was 10.14. And let's be honest, it just makes their jobs a heck of a lot easier and makes the end product a lot better for its users because they don't have to worry about keeping all this old technology in there, a la
Right.
Microsoft and Windows.
Right.
So,
Right. And
yeah,
and there's new things that Apple put into the new latest releases of their OS that developers take advantage of. And a lot of times you'll see where they'll say, you know, you need to have, you know, Monterey or Ventura to run this, or there are features if you want to be able to, you know, use certain features of it, you need to have the latest and greatest, you know, or near latest and greatest OS because it takes advantage of that. And because developers obviously they're going to take advantage of something that Apple offers that can, you know, make their app better. And they're also going to do things easier if Apple gives them a way to develop some sort of feature or some part of their app and make it better that's actually easier to do than it would have been before, they'll
mhm.
take advantage of that as well. And
Oh yeah,
so, yeah, that's just, I mean, obviously the latest and greatest, if at all possible, is good.
is good. Yeah, you know, and as far as having a 2015 iMac, gosh, that, you know, I've mentioned several times on the show, my iMac at the office is a 2012. And that's still
Right.
my daily driver there. It's now an 11-year-old computer, you know, and that is still more than capable, thanks to the fact that I was able to replace the, you know, mechanical hard drive with an SSD. I was able to throw a ton of
Right.
memory into it. But, uh, you know, if someone is on the fence about buying a used 2019 Intel iMac, I'd say there's no
Oh,
question. Go for it. It's a
yeah.
great machine.
Yep.
You know, so
It
the
is.
M1s or M2s run circles around that. And well, so what? Does it do what you need it to
Yeah.
do? And does it do it well? And that's the question. Not everybody has to edit movies in Final Cut Pro. Not everybody has to do 3D animation. Not everybody has to do,
Right.
these processor intensive tasks. Search uh, search a database in seconds, versus
Right.
milliseconds. Let's say milliseconds. Search a database in
Milliseconds
milliseconds
instead of
versus seconds.
a second.
For a lot of
Yeah.
folks, that difference doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm getting the results I need. I'm getting them as quickly as I need. That machine is fine. Even the Intel Mac
Yep.
Mini that just went off sale because they replaced it, still a great little computer.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
pick one up on sale for a steal, why not? Why not? It'd make a great
Why not?
machine.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
you're right. You are right. Now that we're 3 years into the Apple Silicon, how many years are we into it? 3 years?
At least 2.5. Yeah. 3 years.
Yeah, at least
probably,
2.5, 3 years. Now that we're into it, developers are taking advantage of that extra oomph that it can provide and releasing features that are only available for Apple Silicon. Case in
Right.
point, I sound like a broken record and I sound like I'm shilling for them, but I assure you I'm not making any money off of this. Ecamm Live, the version 4, in order to record isolated video tracks, you have to have Apple Silicon. It will not do it on an Intel, and it's just because the Intel is just going to be working too hard to record all those individual video tracks, and the
Right.
Silicon handles it like butter. So
Yeah.
like a knife through butter. And
You can knife through. Who said that?
So there are things that you might want to take into consideration as you move forward with these iMacs and decide, will this continue to do what I need it to do? Will it continue to do what I need it to do well? And or does it make more sense to go with a new M2 Mac Mini or Mac Studio or something like that instead and get a standalone display? But as
Right.
far as those two machines, both are, did I say this already? That both are more than capable. And the added benefit, as I said, is you're going to get all the latest releases of productivity apps and those third-party apps too. As
Right.
far
Not to
as
mention security updates.
not to mention security updates. Absolutely. You're going to get those security updates. And that's super, super important, especially if you're a Safari user. If you are a Firefox user or a Google Chrome user, you've got a little bit of wiggle room there. You can go longer with an older operating system if you can avoid using Safari that's, I don't want to say built into the operating system, but it's not available as a standalone download. So
No. Right.
if you are fully invested in the Apple ecosystem and you're using all Apple apps, your best bet is to stick with the latest operating system or 1 year off all the time. If you are primarily using third-party apps, my internet apps are Firefox and Mozilla Thunderbird. I use Opera. I rarely use Chrome, but it's there. Gosh, what else do I use? Transmit for FTP. These things are third-party developers, and they, as we mentioned a few moments ago, they often will support much older operating systems than Apple will. Apple's ready to jump on that. Oh, you want this latest Pages? You got to be on the latest operating system bandwagon. But
Yes. Yeah.
developers, they want to keep their users happy.
Oh,
longer.
yeah.
So if you're, like I said, if you're fully invested, by all means, buy a new Mac. But as far as getting them up to Monterey, getting them up to what they can run, in fact, I might even argue taking that 2017 and bringing it up to Ventura, giving you the opportunity to get used to the slight differences with Ventura, keep the other one on Monterey, and then depending on where you are with the apps that you use, make that decision then next year or even the year after with the 2015.
Right.
How are you going to handle that? Are you going to do open core legacy patcher? Are you going to replace it? Are you going to just ride it out? What is your use case scenario, and does it does it fit within that use case? But yeah, I absolutely upgrade to Monterey, and I think you'll be happy for at least a year.
Yeah. Yeah. At least, yeah, exactly. At least 1 year.
Yeah, at least 1 year. Cool. And maybe next year for ListenerPalooza, we'll get a question from Lisa about upgrading her hardware again. So it'll all come full circle.
Right. Yes.
Lisa's awesome. Lisa is awesome.
She is.
Okay, so our next question, this is a little hard to read because apparently I don't have the right font installed on this computer that I used on my desktop when I typed this up. Okay, so this is from Karen. Karen wrote, Safari keeps crashing repeatedly on my iMac. I can't even get it to open. I've shut down the computer, I've restarted it, etc. Do you have any ideas to fix this? Switch to Firefox? No. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And it's frustrating. And it's frustrating, especially, as we just mentioned, where Safari is not a standalone download. You can't readily remove it from your Mac and reinstall it when something goes wrong.
Right.
So my first thought, I don't know, and we'll see if you have any thoughts on that, Eric, but my first thought is that it might be an extension giving her grief. Now, this is a little tricky because she's having trouble launching Safari, but if you can get it to launch, and maybe you have to go into safe mode to do this, but if you can get it to launch, you want to go into Safari's preferences or settings if you're on Ventura. And by the way, she was not on Ventura. I should mention that too. You want to go into Safari's preferences, click extensions, and then just flat out uncheck any installed extensions or remove them entirely if you're not using them. Then go ahead and quit Safari and reopen it and see if it's better. That's step one. That would be my first suggestion for a Safari that doesn't launch. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say possibly delete the preferences file. Safari's preferences, obviously you have to dig into the library folder, into the preferences, but no. And I think that get rid of the extensions. And I think one way you could probably do that without having to open up Safari would be to actually remove the app out of the applications folder, because all of those extensions in Safari have an application that goes along with it. They don't really, Apple doesn't really do the plugin. I mean, they do, but they don't. It's not like Firefox or Chrome where you download an extension from the whatever store or website and then it installs itself into the browser itself. You actually download them from the App Store, or possibly some third-party site, but then it actually installs as an app on your Mac and works that way. You can check it and uncheck it inside the browser itself. But if you get rid of that app off, out of the app, at least drag it into the trash, or maybe just even drag it out of the applications folder, it'll probably stop that extension from working.
Oh, so like, for example, throw 1Password in the trash.
Right.
But
yeah. Throw 1Password. Or
I thought that they still installed, I thought there was still something in the system library folder where, 1Password sticks something in there. Or is that not the case anymore?
That was going to be my next thing, is that there might be something in the system library folder where you could pull the extensions out of there. Although every extension that I've used has had a correlating app inside the application folder. So,
oh, really? Okay.
And I don't really know what that is for outside of, I mean, it's weird.
Well, that would be a much easier, if you can't launch Safari, that would be a much easier way to get rid of it. Now, the issue, of course, would be you have to know what extensions you have. You have to know that these are extensions.
Right.
I don't know if Karen knows what extensions, if any, she has installed in Safari. A lot of users don't. They use it. They get prompted. Would you like to add this to Safari? And I'm being generic there, I don't know what the exact message is, but would you like to add this capability to Safari? Sure, why not? And they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if they necessarily. I don't know if she knows that that would be considered an extension or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. There is a little extra step there in knowing what you have installed in Safari, and if you can't launch it, that's tricky. Trying to launch it in safe mode might do the trick. Booting your Mac into safe mode, and then
right.
Yeah. Well,
Which maybe would stop those things from install or from running. Again, if there was something in the system library folder in the applications, what's the application? There's an application folder inside the library. I can't think of it. Application support. Yeah, if there is something in there that holds then that would be terrific. If you could go in there, just remove all those items out of that folder and possibly stop it, But a lot of times too, just getting rid of a preference file can clear things up.
Yeah, you talked about that, and you can dig through your system library or your own library folder and find the preferences for Safari. I found if you're looking for an easy way to do it, if you don't feel particularly techy and you're looking for an easier way to do it, fire up an app like App Cleaner. If you go into App Cleaner and drag Safari into it, it will list everything on your Mac that's related to it in system preferences and everything. Leave it all checked except for Safari, the actual app Safari. Uncheck that and let it wipe everything else out. And that should get everything cleared out.
Yeah, I've done something similar with Hazel's trash. If you drag something into the Hazel, will gather all the supporting files for that application. But App Cleaner would be even better.
Let's do a quick search here and get the exact location. See if I can find the exact location of the system preferences for Safari. I shouldn't say system preferences. The preferences file.
Right. Now, were you able to help her with this problem?
I was, and I'm going to tell you what that is in just a second here. Because okay, here's the location. I just want to make sure I had the right location. See, this is where it's fun when you have people watching the live stream. They can kick in with this stuff. Oh, well, that's useless. Why do we even bother going to Apple's community threads?
I do not know.
Don't know why I bother going in there. Here we go. This one might actually be
Let me guess, the useless thing was probably like the number one answer too.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'll find it. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. So my next suggestion also depended upon being able to launch Safari, but sometimes clearing all your website data. I've had instances where browsers wouldn't launch. I've run into this with Chrome's quite a few times. It comes down to the cookies. If you have tabs, if you have remembering tabs and things like that, and you
Yep.
relaunch the browser, sometimes cookies and other saved website data can be a problem. So if you can get it launched, you would go into Safari's preferences or settings. I hate that we have to do that now. Go into preferences or settings, click
Or settings,
privacy,
yes.
click privacy. For purposes of discussion, we should just say, anytime we say preferences, we also mean settings on Ventura.
Settings.
Anyway.
Yeah. But then you'd have to say, in the case of system preferences, click privacy. In the case of settings, go to the search thing and type privacy, because I can never find anything in system. Yeah.
I can't find a darn thing in the new settings, system settings.
It takes
All right.
forever to
I'll
load.
backtrack again. So if you can open Safari, go to Safari's preferences, click privacy, and then manage website data. And then when you go to manage website data, you can either just try removing cookies for the site that's being remembered, if it's remembering a site. Otherwise, just click remove all, quit Safari, and see if it's better. And then the last thing, of course, is to check and see if there are any waiting updates for your Mac, including Safari updates, because that's how Safari gets updated, is with those updates. If Safari itself is corrupted or there's some other problem with it, almost certainly installing an update will fix that. And that is done under the Apple menu and then System Preferences and Software Update, or Settings and then General and then Software Update if you're on Ventura. She was not, by the way, she's on Monterey. Let Software Update find updates that are waiting for your Mac. It might, in her case, I told her it might find a newer version of macOS. It would find that Ventura is waiting to be installed. And I told her, don't install that. Don't install it yet anyway. I said, instead, look underneath it and see if it says another update's available, and then click more info. And if there's an update for macOS in general, for Monterey, like another point update, or if there's an update for Safari, any updates really, just go ahead and install them. And if you do end up with, a point update for Monterey, it might take 45 minutes to an hour, and it's going to require at least one reboot. But that may also take care of the problem. Now, there is a troubleshooting article that Apple has out, and let me pull that up and kind of cover what they mention.
I was going to say, by doing even like the point update, and although she said he restarted the computer, I was going to say that'll usually blow away any caches that might be.
It does,
causing
yeah.
issues.
And there are certainly ways we can drop to the terminal and clear caches and things like that. But I was trying to keep it simple. When you're trying to solve a problem like Safari is not launching, the idea is not to get too, if you do tech support, the idea is not to get too terribly technical at first. You want to start with what's the simplest thing and then move your way up. Yep, and move your way up.
Which is why restarting the computer is usually the first thing.
Restart the computer. That's, if you watch the IT crowd, that's the very first thing they say when they answer the phone. Did you try rebooting?
You have that on the phone.
So here's what Apple says, and then I'll tell you what actually ended up solving the problem. And it does, the solution actually comes down to effectively reinstalling Safari. But Apple says if Safari isn't working as you expect, I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes. Simple stuff. Reload the page, check Safari extensions, check Safari settings. And they specifically mention privacy settings and security settings and website settings. Test with a private window. That's a good suggestion too. That goes to what we were saying earlier about the website data. If you can launch it, if you can launch Safari at all and you can open a private window, that would give you an idea if stored settings, cookies, website data, etc., are causing a problem.
Right.
Install software updates. And then they say, this is kind of generic advice, but again, this will be in the link I put in the show notes. Check VPN or other security software, check your network settings, and then um, they have the generic resolve other issues. They also say if you've deleted Safari and you don't have a backup, and this is the absolute bonkers thing to me, you have to completely reinstall macOS. That's the only way to get it back in your applications folder,
That
according to
that
Apple.
is, or use pacifist. That is
Yeah,
so stupid.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's silly.
I, I yeah, that it. You know, I was going to say a lot of times these apps too, and obviously it didn't happen in this case, but a lot of times when you launch them and they crash, at least after like the second time or maybe the third, it'll actually pop up a little dialogue saying, this crashed the last time. Do you want to reopen the windows?
Yeah,
And you click no, and that
right.
usually takes care of the problem. But
It
obviously
usually
that
does.
wasn't happening for her.
I
That's just insane.
Yeah. After going all through
I
all
mean,
this, after you know, clearing preferences, after clearing data, making sure there weren't any extensions installed, all this kind of stuff, I ended up connecting to her computer to look at some of these settings myself, going through the library folder, clearing out. We traded all kinds of emails about this, and like I said, I ended up connecting and trying to manually clear all Safari's data. Still wasn't launching. It became clear to me that the problem really was a corrupt application. Safari itself somehow had become corrupt and wasn't launching. So, since she had Ventura waiting, yes, as Apple says, we could just reinstall Monterey. That would take care of it. But since she had Ventura waiting,
right,
I said, you know what? Go ahead and upgrade your Mac to Ventura. It's been out long enough now. I don't think you're going to have any problems with it. She had
right,
previously been running virtual machines on her Mac, and upgrades had caused problems with that in the past. So she was a little nervous about upgrading to Ventura. But I said, you're not doing the virtual machines anymore, and that's always been your sticking point. That's always been the thing that's
right.
caused problems for you, because you would have now an older version of the virtualization software. In her case, it was VMware Fusion. I said, you would have this older version of VMware Fusion, and that would cause problems with the new operating system from Apple until you upgraded Fusion. So she always had this
Right.
tick-tock cycle of needing to upgrade Mac OS, then Fusion, then Fusion. It was a whole thing. But she
Yeah.
was no longer doing that. So I said, go ahead and upgrade to Ventura. And lo and behold, that fixed the problem. So in all of Apple's troubleshooting, the very last suggestion of reinstalling macOS, or in her case, upgrading to Ventura, was what solved the
It's
problem.
the only thing that worked.
Yeah, but since this article from Apple more or less covers the things I suggested she try, I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes, and
Yeah.
hopefully that will help someone else who has this problem in the future.
Well, and the thing is, no matter what, you still kind of want to go through those options, that list in order almost before, because reinstalling the OS is not regardless if, you know, whether or not you have to do the work, it's a small feat. I mean, it's not something I take lightly, and I want to do just to get an app working. So I
No.
I always hope that, you know, not having to does now I mentioned pacifist before. Does that still work? I mean, that I think that I mean I know I used it back in the day when things were still on a DVD or whatever, but I think if you have the download or the install of whatever OS, you can still use that to open it up and pull out um, application. Like it was made for that exact, for this kind of issue where you could go through um, an install package and pull out the apps that you wanted, like Mail or Safari, or whatnot, because that it's just because you have to reinstall the whole thing, something that Apple should offer.
Well, I just looked it up, and you're right. I hadn't thought about pacifist in quite some time, because it was when I last Well, yeah, when I last used it, it was really to extract applications from the OS 10 DVD, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I will tell you, the last version of Pacifist released was 4.0.5 in August of 2022.
Okay.
And so he writes, Pacifist is a powerful multi-tool for working with macOS package files, disk images, and file archives. Using Pacifist, you can open a wide variety of file archives, including, and he lists everything out, examine and extract individual files and folders, inspect install scripts and other package resources, analyze existing installations on your system to help you determine who installed a particular file on your system. That's actually kind of handy. View
Yeah.
archive content straight from the Finder via Quick Look, also handy. And view and extract files from archives via your choice of a slick GUI or an automation-friendly command line interface. So, yeah, it says it's been rewritten from the ground up in Swift 5, and it's compatible
Interesting.
with 10.10.3 or higher, including Ventura. So that, I didn't think about that. That would have been a really good choice. Since I was connected to her computer anyway, that would have been a really good choice
Right.
to
Right.
to purchase a new license to this, because the one I have is quite old. To purchase a license to
Yeah.
this and extract Safari from there. But it comes back down to, yes,
You need to update it.
it's awesome that Pacifist exists, and awesome that we can extract what we
Right.
need from the installation archive and get it reinstalled in our Mac. But we shouldn't have to. Something like Safari, they should
No,
do
I
this.
know.
They should do this more like what they're doing a little bit on iOS, and I don't believe they're doing this much at all on the Mac, and correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
But if I delete Safari from the Mac, why can't I go to
you're
the Mac
done.
App Store and download it?
Yeah, I know. No, I know. I don't know. And the thing was, it wasn't that long ago when you could download the latest version of Safari from the web, from their
I know.
site, as
I
well as
know.
like iTunes. You could never download Mail. I mean, but still, it's fine. The built-in apps are included in the installer, but yeah, you need to at least, if you're not going to do that where you can't download it from the app store, then you need to make it easy enough to get out of the package, the
Hmm.
installer. I don't know, you shouldn't have to reinstall the entire OS
Yeah.
just to get an app back. It
It
just is insane.
it kind of reminds me of Windows and its add remove components. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's still there. I think it's still
Right.
there in Windows
Oh no, it
12.
it totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Wait, 12? What are we
Windows
up to?
11 anyway.
11. 12
11.
is coming.
Yeah.
12 is coming.
Yeah.
There's actually a conversation I want to have around Windows 12 and Mac OS in a coming episode, but I believe it's still there. I'm not entirely
It
certain.
is. Yeah.
But add
Add
remove
remove
components.
components.
You could
Yeah.
uncheck a box, the component would be taken out, whether it was, IIS or Internet Explorer or whatever it was, the component would be taken out, and then you recheck it, reinstalls it, and boom, you're on your way. And that
Yeah.
would be fantastic. And Apple's app stores are effectively that add remove components. At least when it
Right.
comes to
Right.
the miscellaneous apps on iOS that you can remove,
Yeah.
and then when you want them back, you get them through the App Store. So
App Store.
why
Yep.
is Safari not in the App Store? Why is Mail not in the
Why
App
is
Store?
Safari not? Right. Why are all those not in the App Store? Even if they were in a special place,
Yeah.
like download built-in apps, whatever sort of thing, where people couldn't necessarily get them except for through that. I don't know, but yeah, you're right. And my favorite Windows thing is whenever you removed an application. I know this is different than components, but when you removed an application, it would say, "Do you want to delete? Also remove this supporting file, DLL,
You're
whatever."
like, I
And it
don't
was
know.
like, just, I know it'd say, "Just so you know, other apps might be using this," and I would be like, "I don't know, you tell me." How. So I would never remove these other supporting files because I never knew if I was going to screw something up. It just, it
And
cracked me up.
while we're down this rat hole, for a company that loves backwards compatibility, why does it insist on installing like a dozen versions of Visual C++ application libraries instead of just having
Right.
one version that includes
Right.
compatibility with all the previous ones?
Yeah.
I don't
It
understand.
doesn't make sense.
I guess I'm not a programmer. I don't know, but
No,
why do that?
I
You go
don't
on
know.
someone's computer and you're helping them out and you're like, well, let's get rid of some of the old junk in here, and you're going through their add remove programs and you see like a bazillion versions of this, Visual C++ library, and you're like, well, I don't know why this is all in here, but I'm not going to touch it because I don't know what you have that needs it.
Right. Exactly. You just don't know if something now you go to launch an app and it won't work. Yeah. No.
And then they call you
Nope.
again anyway.
I know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's Microsoft's fault. That's not my fault for removing it at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the ultimate answer for Karen was to upgrade to Ventura. If she had
Yep.
already been on Ventura, unfortunately, the answer would have been to reinstall Ventura.
Reinstall it.
When
Yep.
nothing else worked, when none of the basic troubleshooting worked, and the end result is, we must have a corrupt version of Safari here. The answer is reinstall macOS.
Reinstall
So,
macOS. Right.
yeah. But those are some other things you can try. And again, I'll put those troubleshooting steps from Apple in the show notes.
Right.
Next question is from Bill. Bill writes, my Apple Watch is no longer unlocking my Mac. What can I do? I've had this happen. If you had this happen, you wake up your
Yeah.
Mac and your watch just refuses to unlock it. Your watch is unlocked.
Oh yeah.
But your Mac will not unlock. And it
Right.
doesn't
And
have
then I have
anything
to
to do
escape
with,
on.
yeah. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with having just rebooted the Mac or anything.
Right.
The watch just it'll sit there and churn for a second and say, yeah, no, I can't unlock it. And you have to put in your password or whatnot.
Right.
I've had that happen. The solution for me, and this is the first thing I told Bill to check, this is the one that almost always works for me. Not every time, but almost always works for me. We just mentioned it a moment ago. Reboot the Mac. That's it.
Reboot the Mac.
That's it.
Yeah.
After you reboot, the
Yeah.
very first time, the password's going to be required. But from then on, your watch should work to unlock the Mac.
Unlock it.
More often than not, that simple solution of, have you rebooted it? Is it plugged in? Whatever. No, have you rebooted the Mac?
Right.
That solution, more often than not, is what solves the problem of the watch not unlocking it.
Have you ever run into this? And I run into this all the time where I'll wake up the Mac, watch will not unlock it. I hit escape, put it back to sleep, wake it up again. Now it unlocks it.
Oh, no, I've
Like,
not.
I
I've
didn't
not
have to-
run into that.
Yeah. And that happens all the time with me. If I just hit escape, like, nope, I didn't mean to wake this up, and then just wake it up again, it's all of a sudden, okay, yep. It's just really weird. It drives
Now
me nuts.
it works.
But yeah.
So that's another suggestion too, Bill. If rebooting doesn't, I'll tell you, I gave him a few different solutions. I'll tell you in the end which one worked. But if rebooting doesn't work, try Eric's solution. Hit escape, and then it goes back to sleep again, right?
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
and then just press shift to wake it up or whatever.
Right. Any key. Yeah. And just
And
wake
see
it
if
up
it-
again, just like you woke it up before, and voila, you wait a second and your watch will do its little haptic dance and the computer will unlock, however it does it.
I would love to see a haptic dance. That
You could feel it on your wrist. It's kind of a satisfying click, actually.
Now, the second solution I gave him is something that happens more often than you'd think, and it's always inadvertent. It's never. I can't think of any reason someone would do this on purpose, but make sure you have both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth turned on. That's actually, that's a requirement. It's a requirement for the Mac to have them both on. It's a requirement for the watch to have them both on. It's easy to turn them off. It's very easy to turn them off on the watch inadvertently.
No, you do have to have that.
Yeah, you slide up and you've accidentally tapped the Wi-Fi icon, and now suddenly you don't have Wi-Fi anymore. So it's far too easy to accident on the phone. It's very easy to turn off too, by the way. But make sure you have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth turned on. That's super important. It's absolutely a requirement. And then the other thing is to make sure, and I have run into this before, make sure that you are signed into iCloud with the same Apple ID on the Mac and the Apple Watch. If you're not, ain't going to work. And then the last thing is in the same category. This is in the second thing to try. Make sure Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is turned on. Make sure you're using the same iCloud account. The last thing is to make sure that you are using two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication has to be turned on for your Apple ID. And if it's not, you can't unlock it. Now, obviously it was, because it did unlock his Mac. So that's not the likely scenario. But if for some reason he went in and turned it off for, whatever reason, he might not have turned it back on again. And that's just something to check. So Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, same Apple ID, and two-factor authentication are all requirements of unlocking your Mac with your watch. So that would be the second thing to try. And then the third thing, I've actually had to do this before too. But I listed it as the third thing. I guess it's probably the hardest thing of the three to try. But if neither of those solves it, then you might actually have to turn the feature off and back on again. And to do that on macOS 12 or earlier, again, 12 versus Ventura 13, on 12 or earlier, you go into System Preferences, you go to Security and Privacy, you go to General, and then you uncheck Use Apple Watch to unlock apps in your Mac. Now, I'll often suggest turning that off and then rebooting. But in this particular case, I said just wait a few seconds and then recheck the box again. You can do both. Sometimes, and this is a little bit older issue, that I don't think this really happens much anymore, but I found in the past sometimes when you turn off things in System Preferences, you kind of have to quit System Preferences and or reboot and then go in and turn them back on again. I don't think that's really the case any longer. Security and Privacy, General, uncheck, use Apple Watch to unlock apps in your Mac, wait a few seconds, recheck the box, then reboot your Mac. Again, you'll have to put in your password the very first time, but then sleep it, wake it up, and see if it's working again. On Ventura, macOS 13 or later, the same process is done through Settings, and then you have to scroll down the big long list of settings and go to Login Password, and then turn off your Apple Watch. And, it might be listed as something like Eric's Apple Watch or Mike's Apple Watch or something like that. Whatever, in this particular case, it's going to probably be called Bill's Apple Watch. And so you turn off your Apple Watch, wait a few seconds, turn it back on again, reboot the Mac and see if it's working. So those are the three solutions. First, reboot, see if it fixes it. Second, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, same iCloud account, and two-factor authentication. And then the third is turning the feature off and on again. And any guesses to what fixed it?
Turning it off and turning it on.
Rebooting the Mac. That was it. Rebooting the Mac.
I was going to say your first thing.
Yep. So I didn't need to expend all that energy typing up three solutions for Bill. All I had to do was give him the first one, reboot your Mac. But that never feels satisfying. If you're going to give people solutions, give them solutions. Don't just say reboot it or turn it off and on again. Give them all the possible solutions. And that's the one that worked.
It's the one that worked. Yeah. So it's possible that maybe, like I said, where if you just let it go back to, put it back to sleep and then woke it up again, maybe that would have worked too. I don't know if it's still happening to him, or hopefully it's not happening to him anymore, so he doesn't have to deal with it. But
Well, I heard back from him and he said it was working after rebooting. So hopefully he hears this, because I had never done the escape, put it back to sleep, and wake it up again. Essentially rebooting is the same thing, but something gets clogged up. Something gets clogged up in the works, and it just doesn't want to work.
Right.
So
it just doesn't want to do it. No, I know.
Now, conversely, my watch unlocks my phone all the time, even when I don't want it to. I'll get that little haptic feedback on the watch, and it says, "I've unlocked your phone." I'm like, I didn't want you to unlock my phone, but it did.
I don't want you to do that.
We talked about...
And then the phone unlocks your watch too.
I know. I can't get that to work reliably. I can't get the reverse to work reliably, but I can get the watch to unlock the phone reliably. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's almost the opposite for me. It reliably unlocks my watch, but my watch, it doesn't, especially now that I switched to the Face ID different, where I do the around the eyes thing, for the masks, since they've come out with that. It used to be the only way to open up your phone automatically was with the watch. But then I'd say maybe it was 5-6 months ago, they came out with change to the Face ID, which you can switch to, which is made for masks. So it focuses around your eyes. It's a little less secure, I guess.
Less secure, but
then,
yeah.
But then you can open it up wearing a mask. And now, since then, my watch hardly ever triggers my phone. It's almost like the only time it does then is like if I'm holding it weird, or I don't know. I think the other thing is too, now that the phone can do an ankle like the iPad, that probably doesn't need the watch as much either. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know. The watch has become, my pushback on the watch when it first came out. I even experimented with that Moto 360, which really was a disaster. That was a disaster of experimentation. It was a neat looking watch. I liked the round face. I liked the build of it. I thought it was a really nice watch, but it just did not work reliably. And I had my doubts that the Apple Watch would ever work reliably too. And yet, when I would look at Barry's or yours or someone else's and saw how well it integrated with the phone and the Mac and everything, I went, wow, man, I guess I got to get one. And I did. And it has been, and I can't remember if we talked about this during the recording of the show or before we started recording the show, but the AirPods, the AirPods are one of those magical devices that Apple released that once you have them, you think, God, why did I not have these before? And the Apple Watch is one of those things that when it's not on my wrist and I sit down at my computer and I see the password come up on screen, I went, what? Why is it
on here?
Oh, I don't have the watch on, or
I don't have the watch
the phone, or I've never enabled the Face ID with a mask because the watch unlocks the phone.
Works.
You use Face ID, but because you have the watch on at the same time, there's that trust, that level of trust. Now, I'm not sure how much trust can be put in a device that can be unlocked with a 4-digit PIN code, but because that's the extent of security on the watch. So all this other stuff.
You can do it. You could do an 8-digit PIN code, which is what I have mine set at.
Really? Well, that's just insane. I'm not going to do an 8-digit PIN.
I'm not going to do that.
Security be darned. I'm not going to do an 8-digit PIN code.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do an 8-digit PIN code. That's interesting. You can do 6 on the phone. You can do 8 on the watch.
Yeah. And actually you can do 12 on the, you can do even
you
longer.
Can do 12 you can do more
I have
than...
like a 12-digit. pin code on my phone because you can add it like what they call a complex password.
Oh,
But I
right.
just do
That's
numbers.
right.
And so,
That's
um,
right.
and yeah,
Well, I just gave away to the world my lack of security on my devices, but there you go. So everything comes down to a forward look, people. If you get a hold of my Mac and my phone and my watch all together, it all comes down to the 4-digit PIN code of my watch. That's it. That'll unlock
So-
everything.
right. That's still 10,000 possible combinations. So,
Yeah, but I think
and you
now that
probably have
I've
it
said
set
that
to
I have
delete after 10.
I think now that I've said that I have to change it.
That's
Oh,
that's
I have one
awesome.
more question. Do we have time for one more question, Eric? This is a quick one.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do
Okay,
it.
and then we'll wrap things up. We're at an hour and a half now, so I'm going to wrap things up with this last question. Now, the bad thing is, and I have a bunch more questions, by the way, so we're going to do another ListenerPalooza sooner than later. But this last question, unfortunately, I have lost track of who sent this to me. I do not know who sent me this question. So if you're listening and this is your question, I'm glad we could help you, but I forgot. And I looked, I
Don't know who you are.
searched through all my emails and everything. I cannot find who sent me this. But the question is, I wonder if it came over the phone, and that's why I don't have the name on it. But the question is, I often visit places where a loud chord would get me frowned upon if I need to reboot my Mac. Is there a way to disable the startup sound? Yes. As a matter of fact, it's very easy on Ventura. On Ventura, it's under System Settings and Sound, and then you just turn off Play Sound on Startup. Boom. That's it. That's all you have to do in Ventura. So this is an instance where all those complicated settings and everything, there is a very simple setting for turning off the startup sound. System
Startup sound.
settings, sound, or just settings, I guess. Settings, sound, and turn off Play Sound on Startup. That's it. Now on
Yep.
Big Sur and Monterey, it's under System Settings, Sound, Sound Effects, and then turn off Play Sound on Startup. So it's a little bit more difficult. It's one level deeper than it is on Ventura. So it's pretty straightforward on Big Sur or Monterey. And then on other versions, what you do is you just mute your Mac sound prior to reboot.
I was going to say that mute your Mac sound, or you can even turn it down.
You can
Like
turn
you
it
can have the
down.
volume really low.
Yeah.
I think it actually turns down the chord sound or the startup chime, if I remember right. But yeah, mute the Mac sound. Does that not work anymore with the latest? If you mute,
You know what? I don't know. With there being the
yeah,
toggle for it, yeah, I imagine it
that's
would.
still
Now there were
yeah.
some Macs for a while that didn't have the startup sound, and it was freaking
Yes,
people out.
yeah,
Now, did
right.
Apple add it back through firmware on those models, or are they still silent?
You
Do you
know,
know?
see, I thought you could still find it. It started in 2016 when they started taking it out, and I wanted to say I thought at least for a while there you could turn it on with a terminal command,
Terminal command,
but
yeah.
I think it was something ultimately that came down to a firmware update, um, or something because it couldn't be activated. No, on one of the MacBook Pros I had, I think it, which is 2019, you couldn't just turn it on through a terminal command. It's that easy. And then they brought it back anyway with Catalina or Monterey or whatever, which it was really dumb to remove that because not only is it kind of a, you know, historical Mac thing, but it's also used for troubleshooting. You know, you use it if you zap the PRAM, you know, let go of the keys on the
Mm-hmm.
second chime. You know, well, if you
You
don't
need to
have
know.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I found on this is iDownload blog. Just as we were talking there, I found on pre-OS 10 Yosemite the terminal command was sudo nvram system audio volume, one word. So sudo space nvram space system audio volume equals, and then they show %80. Let's see. That is, why would %80 be off?
That's what I was just thinking.
I
thought you were going to say 0 or 1 or
Yeah. And so
%80.
let's see. That according to this, that's the permanent way of disabling it on OS 10 pre-Yosemite. Now I don't know why %80. And then it says, depending on your Mac model, the command above may not work. If it didn't, try repeating steps 1 through 4, except using sudo nvram system audio volume equals %01. Again, why not just 0?
Okay.
0 or 1. That's
Right.
Typically it's binary when you're making system settings changes like this.
Right.
Now the same article, so that I can't say with 100% authority that that's the correct command, but that's what came up while we were talking here. And this is an article from 2016, so that may or may not still work, but it says that that's for pre-Yosemite. After that,
Well, hopefully he's got something newer on, and he can use one of the easier methods that you mentioned before.
Exactly. I would just use system preferences, quite frankly. I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
This article also mentions a piece of software called Auto Mute. Auto Mute disables the startup tone on post OS 10 Yosemite Macs. That seems like a lot of trouble. Just use the system preferences and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Again, Big Sur or Monterey, it's system settings, sound effects, turn off, play sound on startup. Ventura, it's system settings and sound, turn off, play sound on startup. And then, as Eric and I both said, pre Big Sur, you can just mute your Mac sound and reboot. And I think that has been the solution for quite some time.
Yeah. I want to say that's true too. I don't think they've changed that, but it's possible.
Yeah.
I was just happy to get it back.
Yeah. Well, try it, Eric. We're on the live stream. Go ahead and reboot your Mac and see what happens.
Okay, hang on a second.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's going to do it for this ListenerPalooza episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, we do love to get your letters. That's how we can have these episodes. So if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, software or hardware problem with your Mac, or you have your own question about Mac or iOS that you would like to hear addressed in a future ListenerPalooza, be sure to leave your comments in this week's show notes found at ForMacEyesOnly.com, or drop me a line, Mike@ForMacEyesOnly.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric for joining me this episode.
Thank you. Yes.
Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. I like how you shake your head to the audio listening audience. And we're out.